life is all about perspective. I truly believe that the way you view life will have the greatest impact on what comes out of life for you. One of those, I guess, the two ways that you can look at life is through limiting beliefs or through a growth mindset. And, recently, it's considered the toughest job market, and you can make a lot of excuses with that to limit yourself and be in the state of comfort after failure. I applied for internships, too many that I want to say, but pretty much my growth mindset pushed me through. And I feel like that sets you so much farther ahead than someone who has limiting beliefs. Because with limiting beliefs, you will kind of look at, first off, you might be too intimidated by the job market and what everyone is saying about it. You might not even have the courage to, get your applications out and apply to different places. But with a growth mindset, you really have the opportunity to create this optimistic, I like to call it rational optimism, but that's pretty much, you understand, you can't do everything, but you have this optimism that a lot of people don't have, where you're going to keep pushing through failure and keep trying. And when it comes down to it, a lot of people aren't going to have what it takes to continue pursuing through that struggle. So I like to think, I think it's okay to be a little delusional, but like I said, with rationality, you have to understand there are some barriers to what you can and can't do, but try as much as you can not to limit yourself, because with the growth mindset, I think you can surprise yourself with what you can do. So, like I said, you could either have limiting beliefs or growth mindset. So the results that come out of that are going to be extremely different based on which mindset that you choose to have. And you get to choose pretty much. It can take some time to flip to another side, but I truly believe that you get to choose that. And with limiting beliefs, you might look at the world as something that's out to get you and something you shouldn't even bother working hard to try at. But with a growth mindset, you don't adopt that belief. You get to, you honestly feel happier because you understand failure is to come, but with that failure comes growth, and you really get to develop yourself, work on yourself, and in the end you get to see that growth, and that's just another plus for why it feels so great. Another perspective shift is, I never used to be someone who did gratitude or who was really on that trend, but I've recently adopted that, and I feel like that's made me feel happier than I have, in other times in my life. And, they say that thief is the comparison, is the, whoops, I said it wrong. Comparison is the thief of joy. So, if you look at other people, you kind of get an irrational view of their life because you don't see the full perspective. You see probably the highlights or the best parts. People aren't comfortable sharing the worst parts with you. Everyone says when you're asking someone how they're doing, they're going to say good or great if you're not very close to them. So you kind of don't see the full picture. So you automatically think that people may be doing better than you or whatnot. But I think really the key is to flip the perspective on that. So instead of having this comparison between other people, where you're thinking about what you don't have, you need to flip that perspective to being grateful for what you do have. And that's really done a lot for me, because puts me in this mindset that I have a lot going for me, and you kind of just block out the negativity, and it really gets you going, continuous, gets the ball rolling in that perspective, and you feel more in control of your emotions, and with that you also feel more in control of your actions. You have more motivation, you achieve things that you didn't think you could, and that just builds more motivation. So yeah, one example of this or a perspective flip that I've kind of adopted as well, is about learning. And in college, I used to be a procrastinator, and I used to think of assignments or homework as something that I had to do. But if you change that to something where you get to do, and you got to choose pretty much what you went to study, and you understand the opportunity isn't something that everyone gets, you become more grateful. So that's one part of it, but then there's also the other part where I feel like once you actually get into studying, at least for me, it actually becomes enjoyable. Like you're learning things that you really won't learn anywhere else, and that's really enjoyable. You're working on yourself. There's not many things better than that you could do for yourself. So yeah, I'd say the final perspective flip that I'm trying to develop is funny. It's pretty much my perspective of traffic now that I'm working and have to deal with that. My default would honestly be just in this moment of stress where you might be angry that the flow of traffic is really slow, and you're not going to where you want to go in an efficient manner because there's jams and people are constantly braking. But if you change that perspective where you don't have to be mad, and there's not much that you can do at that time to make traffic move faster, you can really flip your perspective and get in this space of focus and contentment where there's nothing you can do. And matter of fact, any anger that I do have is probably gonna result in a worse outcome, whether that's reckless driving or just unneeded stress that being angry won't cause anything to move faster within that traffic. So yeah, I think it's really important the way that you view life, what's happening to you, and with the way you view it, that determines how you respond to it, and your response drives the outcomes of what will happen in the future, how your life will turn out.